Welcome to the REI Diamond Interview, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom with Dan Breslin.
Welcome to the REI Diamonds podcast. I'm Dan Breslin, and on these REI Diamonds interviews, I bring you the real estate investment community's highest performers. My guests are industry leaders, including real estate investors, developers, and other service providers who are playing the game at a high level. In short, the information you hear here will make you money. Today's episode guest is Bart Banks of Banks & Banks Law, a Philadelphia attorney with more than 50 years experience in law, real estate, and real estate financing. Bart's the former president of Vanguard Savings and Loan, and he's also been the CEO of too many companies to list here. Bart participates in deals today in a financing capacity, but he has experience in deals ranging from waterfront land deals in New Jersey to mini malls in Florida, and even owning several prime Center City, Philadelphia office buildings. My goal on the REI Diamonds podcast is to bring you, the listener, a ton of value by presenting guests who share their ideas and systems that have made them successful. Right now, you should pause the tape and get a pad and paper. You're going to want to take notes. Many guests include their contact information at the end of each episode, so if one of my guests can help you to take your business to the next level, feel free to reach out to them or me to get the ball rolling. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Bart Banks onto the show. Well, welcome to the REI Diamonds podcast, Bart.
Dan, it's good to be here.
So the burning question on everybody's mind at the beginning of each of these interviews is kind of how you got started. What was the backstory? And I know a little bit about yours, so I guess we can start at the beginning, Bart.
Okay. I don't know how far you want to go back, but my dad was an attorney and a real estate investor. And during the 40s, and he and my grandfather and uncle had hundreds of properties. And I used to do the bookkeeping for him when I was in college. That was my first introduction. And I would ride with him as he visited different homes and tenants and kind of learned at his knee.
Nice. I can relate with that. I'm going to tell a little bit of my story here, and then I'll have another question for you about that because I think it's interesting, and I did something similar all along. My dad, back in the late 80s, I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old, and he was buying properties in South Philly, just a handful, not the number that you guys had put together, your dad had put together. But I remember I think I had a paper route right around the same time, and I was making $12 a month or something like that. And I remember doing the math. He bought the property for $7,000, and he put like $7,000 or $8,000 into it. A lot of sweat equity. And then he rented it out for $300, and I think they went and got a mortgage. So it was $350 a month was the rent, and the mortgage was like $175, I think. So I did the math, and I'm like, wow, he's making $175 a month. This sure beats my paper route. And I knew that someday I was going to get into real estate too. But I always make this comment, Bart. I'm always, not so much today as I did when I first got into the business when I was 25, 26 years old. And I'd always talk about the real estate crash of the 80s, at late 80s, early 90s, the savings and loan. And I'd talk about it as if I had lived it as an adult. And no one seemed to question the fact that I was like a little too young to have been actually involved in real estate during that time. But, history repeats itself. And I think it would be wise to kind of maybe, could you share with us some of the experiences and problems that happened economically along the path for, you and your dad and you guys kind of coming through real estate? I think that'd be interesting for our listeners, Bart.
Oh, sure. Very similar to your background. I remember at one time somebody saying, boy, Frank Banks, that was my dad. He must have bought hundreds of houses. And that sounds impressive until you understand that in those days, he probably paid no more than $2,000 for any house he ever bought and financed it 90% or 95%. He could pick up a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house for $1,500. Now, how I got to be an entrepreneur, if you will, is when I was a preteen, I delivered orders for the local grocer, and I had a wagon that cost me $5 to put the orders in to take to people's homes. At one point, the grocer offered me $10 for the wagon, and I thought, wow, that's 100% profit. And I sold it to him, ended my delivery career, and decided that I was going to make a living buying and selling. That's
nice. That's pretty cool. So your dad, I know this. Well, let's introduce the book here, Bart. You had just completed your third book, right? So do you want to kind of tell us the title and a few of the topics there?
Well, it's called How to Make Real Money in Real Estate, and the subtitle is Cash Begins with C. It's my contention that there are 120 different words that describe elements of making money in real estate, all of which begin with the letter C. If you look at the table of contents, every different subject begins with the letter of C. That may be a coincidence, but I think among the 120 different topics, I cover pretty much the waterfront. It's a good primer for beginners, and I think old-timers will get a chuckle out of it and be nodding their head, yeah, I went through that too, and even pick up some new concepts that maybe they didn't come across yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one of the stories you told, I don't know if the C was one of them, but rent control. I mean, a lot of landlords just take it for granted how efficient the market is these days, I guess with the exception of the guys in New York City. I mean, did you guys have some experience with that, Bart?
Oh, sure. Actually, that either comes in under the heading of counsel. My dad, who used to try cases, in those days you had to go into court to get an increase in rent. And one day, I remember being with my dad, and he went in and pleaded to the judge that the poor landlord had the house for 10 years, had not been allowed an increase in rent, and the taxes went up, and the water, sewer went up, insurance went up, repairs were much more expensive, and if he didn't get an increase in rent, he wasn't going to be able to pay his mortgage. 2 cases later, my dad represented a tenant who worked at the Navy Yard. There was, at that time, it was maybe during the Second World War, and my dad pleaded for him that he hadn't had a raise in 4 or 5 years, that his food costs had gone up, his clothing costs had gone up, he had a wife and a couple of kids, a non-working wife, and if in fact the landlord, this greedy man, was allowed to increase the rent, they couldn't have afforded it. And the judge looked down at my dad, I'll never forget, and said to him, Mr. Banks, isn't your argument in the second case diametrically opposed to your argument in the case you just made 2 cases ago? And I remember my dad's comment to him. He said, sure as hell, Judge, I ought to win one of them.
That's great. What a unique time in the Philadelphia history there, huh?
That was the time in the 40s during the Second World War. We had just switched from a Republican administration to a Democratic administration. The Democrats were, quote, the party of the people, and they froze rents for a good 5 years after the war ended yet. It was very popular. Philadelphia is noted to be a blue-collar town, and at that time, most of the people rented. It wasn't such a great city of homeowners. Afterward, it became maybe the number 1 city in the world in percentage of homeowners, because in order to avoid the rent control, landlords got into lease purchasing, they got into VA mortgages, FHA mortgages, methods of financing sales, dollar down, dollar when you get it, and the whole town turned into one big town of homeowners. And it was so prevalent that maybe the favorite recreational or entertainment idea was having barbecues on your back porch, because nobody could afford nightclubs or movies, or they were all making mortgage payments. And Philadelphia, W.C. Fields, the great comedian, put on his tombstone, all in all, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. It was the deadest town in America. There was nothing going on because everybody was spending all their money on mortgage payments.
That's interesting to note. So what you're telling me then is like the home ownership drive, because it hasn't been, as much as they will say, oh, this is the American dream, is to own a home. And that wasn't always the case all the way back through history. But from what you're telling me, it was literally the rent control circumstances that began, the landlord's push to start to rather sell the properties almost. I guess that would have been like the mortgage payments would have been higher than what the rent control was, right, Bart?
Absolutely. What it was they'd rent you a house and you'd give them an extra $25 a month, which they would accumulate for you for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And at the end of that point, you'd have enough deposit down payment to get a conventional or some kind of real mortgage and buy the house. That was the beginning of lease purchasing residential real estate. Before that, there was lease purchasing of commercial real estate, but there was no lease purchasing of residential real estate.
Interesting. So let's shift gears here a little bit. And, these days, let's talk about your function in the real estate market right now in the Philadelphia area and beyond if you're active elsewhere. I mean, what are you up to now, Bart?
Right now, I'm running well, first of all, I'm an attorney, and I'm a member of a law firm, Banks and Banks, with my son and others, and we do a good bit of real estate work. Secondly, we own a family investment company, real estate investment company, and we finance investors and rehabbers. We give them the money to buy a property, settle it, repair it, renovate it, carry it, and eventually either sell it or get a permanent mortgage, pay us off, and rent it out. And sometimes we joint venture with people. Sometimes we're just plain lenders. When times are good and everybody's making a dollar, we're called creative financiers. When times are bad and things are difficult, we're called hard money lenders. And we're the same people, but depending on what the market's doing, we are titled appropriately.
And what was it that, I'm assuming that all Dad's units, I guess I figured it out from the book, but for our listeners who are wondering, what made the transition? So you're not much of a landlord these days, Bart, correct?
Well, we do own a few properties, which unfortunately we've had to take back. Hard money lending, the definition of a hard money lender is sometimes it's very hard to collect. And unfortunately, some of our people don't listen, don't make it, and we have to take some back. So we do own some properties, but by and large, we're financiers.
Okay. So what made you make the transition then? What was it that caused you and the family to make a shift there?
We went through different stages. Stage one was Dad and my uncle and grandfather acquired a lot of rental properties. That kind of put me through college and law school and helped raise our family. I guess at a point they didn't want the inventory. I understand that you flip a lot of properties.
Correct.
Being in the rental business is a full-time business. On Saturday night when you get those calls that the toilet's overflowing or the roof is leaking, it's not much fun always. It can be very lucrative. You can build yourself a big estate, but it's not what everybody's cut out to do. So at a certain point in Dad's career, they started to sell off their inventory and take back mortgages. In 1955, he got the only state-chartered savings and loan. He got a charter to operate a savings and loan. It was the only one granted in about 25 years. It was a small one. It was state-chartered. We ran it out of our office. And it helped us finance out a lot of the occupants we had, tenants we had. It helped them buy the houses that we had been renting to them. And, of course, make loans to other people. I have also been the president of a small business investment company and a real estate holding company and done many endeavors in real estate-related financing throughout my life. I just somehow get a better sense of satisfaction either joint venturing or financing others and helping them to build their business than I did in owning my own real estate and renting it. It's just I get much more of a sense of self-satisfaction.
Interesting. Without naming any names, can we maybe talk about a couple of the deals and the specifics that you've put together? Maybe some highlights of some good ones and maybe some not so good ones, Bart.
I've had them both. Are there any in particular you have in mind, or?
Well, what would be the best, deal or two that you've done?
The best deal I ever did was buying my own office building. It's right in the center of Philadelphia, 1521 Walnut. I bought it from a guy who was going into the DA's office. Jim Crumlish was going to be elected as district attorney of Philadelphia, and I bought it for $200,000 and got a PIDC mortgage. As far as I know, it was the first time they made a mortgage loan. PIDC is Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation. First time they made a mortgage loan or approved one to a law firm. I set up my shop there and rented out many offices to other lawyers. I put a third floor on the building and held it for about close to 20 years. It paid off the mortgage and provided me with a very nice income, and I eventually sold it for about $1 million. It has since resold for even more than that several times. But that was the background of that helped put my kids through college and law school.
Nice.
If you're patient in real estate and you take care of your inventory, 5 times return is not out of sight.
What was the thought process when you approached that deal? I mean, did you know, hey, if I buy in this particular, part of downtown, can you remember back and kind of like walk me through that? Say I'm looking around now because,
I remember saying to myself, I'm tired of paying rent. I'd love to have my own place. I'd like to be able to get tenants who would pay me enough rent that I wouldn't have to pay rent. And then there was one other factor, and you won't believe this one, or maybe you will. It was next door to Le Bec Fin, the most famous restaurant in Philadelphia. The Magic Pan was on the other side. Arthur's was across the street, which was a very famous restaurant, and they all had swinging bars. All right. Okay. Now, in my book, should that enter into your consideration? Absolutely not. But I got to tell you that it was in my mind at the time.
All right. So you wanted to be at the vibrant place. You could step out the front door. You could go to lunch at Le Bec Fin or, take clients up and down the street. Right, Bart? It was the place to be. I don't recommend that as a reason to buy real estate. Well, I don't know. They say location, 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 right? If it wasn't for that location, do you think the 5 times return on investment, not to mention the cash flow and, the tenants that you enjoyed space with, you think all that would be possible? No, I think you're right. I just fell in love with the building, and I think really real estate, although you got to have a good gut feel for it, you really shouldn't fall in love with bricks. All right. What about some recent deals? You've had to put a few of them together in the last year or two, right? Yeah, mostly we are financing people. We have a stable of customers that come back to us often. We continue to finance them. One of our customers is rebuilding the 38th, 39th, and Haverford area. He's bought dozens of properties down near Penn and Drexel, and he's really providing much-needed housing for students down there. And that gives me a sense of accomplishment, helping him. We have financed him 100% loan to value. He puts virtually nothing into his acquisitions. We trust him. He's proved himself, and I feel good about that. We've also done that kind of financing up around Temple University. Guys that buy up the old 3-story buildings and convert them into rooms for 9 students. And Temple sure needs that too. Although lately Bart Blatstein has built some dorms for them, and some other people have built some dorms for them. And I imagine the student housing pinch isn't as severe. Over the course of years,
I've been involved in buying a mini mall in Florida, a flea market with 150 booths in North Miami. We have bought a marina down in near Atlantic City, all different types. I once was the owner and manager of 1737 Chestnut Street, a 10-story office building. I have no idea what's there now, but I suspect it might be a fancy apartment house. And we have done all different types of purchases and financing, and it was all fun. It was all fun.
So the kind of stuff that you took on, I mean, it sounds like a variety. We have retail, we have office. Did you do much residential in your career?
Pretty much that's what we specialized in. You know, let me tell you something. When I like myself, Dan, I'm a jack of all trades. I'm a Renaissance man. I'm well-rounded. If I have a deal that's gone south, scattered, I have no focus, I'm annoyed with myself for venturing into a different area that I didn't know about. Actually, I'm the same guy, but I've tried it all. I've really tried it all, and there's no teacher like experience. I can and will later on recommend some books. And by the way, I'm not so keen on gurus who mentor you and programs where you buy a bunch of tapes or discs and books and you have a mentor. And I'm a devotee and an advocate that you buy a little property and you fix it up and rent it out or sell it, that there's no better teacher than experience. I have paid for many of my lessons. I don't know a way to shortcut it. You either may go to school, college and graduate school and pay $100,000 for an education, or you get out there and you buy a $30,000 house, put 20 into it, fix it up, and either rent it or sell it. One way or another, you're going to pay for your education and to get where you have to get. I'm a devotee of do it yourself. Get into it.
Yeah, and I agree with you that the experience is the best part. And I was one of the people, my dad, he didn't obtain the same level of experience maybe that your dad had. And we had an opportunity back in 2006. And, these gurus were everywhere, Bart. And the way that I personally got into the business and really learned the ropes quick was we invested close to $15,000 with another guy. And my dad backed off and he said, this is for you, Dan. And he basically pushed me forward with the guy we met in the sales pitch seminar. So he and I then partnered up, this other guy, Dave. He was from up the Allentown way. So we just met him at the seminar. We went halves on this, $15,000 or so package of seminars. Granted, you can get this experience or this knowledge much cheaper, but I will say, Bart, that the things that I learned, we traveled to Florida. We went to a 4 or 5 day seminar. We went to a lease options course, went to a couple courses, and the things that I did learn there, I came back to the Philadelphia market and I had the language. I had the experience of other people, and I was able to kind of talk my way into circles that I would not have been able to even approach before that. I mean, at the time when I was 26, I had tried a lot of different jobs. I had tried car sales. I was electrician. I mean, you name it. I was kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none at the time. So I really didn't have a lot to offer people when I came to the business. I had no money. My credit was kind of shabby back in 2005, 2006. And the things that I did learn in that seminar allowed me to make contacts with people who still to this day are private investors, business partners of mine, people with a lot of experience, a lot more contacts than I had. So while there is a lot, you should be guarded. And there's a lot of, great education products for, just a few $100 from Dig and from some of the other, local people. I think there's, to your point, I think people should beware of where they're buying the knowledge, but by the same token, I mean, I can speak from experience that if it wasn't for us pulling the trigger on that, I don't know where I'd be today. You know what I mean? If I'm being candid.
Dan, what I'm referring to is that our law office has represented widows and orphans who have bought $30,000 courses over a weekend in maybe Houston, Texas, from self-styled expert who assigned them a mentor who now lives in California and can only be reached at 8 o'clock at night on the telephone when he's not waiting on tables. And this particular woman I'm thinking of, who was a widow with a handicapped kid, who she had a college fund that she spent on these courses for $35,000, and she had trouble getting her mentor on the phone, and the discs that she bought and the books that she bought sat in the corner of her den and didn't make any money for her, and she never ventured, nor did she have any money left to go out and buy a property. And I had to contact the agency, the outfit that was selling to people like that, and threatened to sue them pretty good to get her money back, and we got most of it back. And I hear too damn many stories just like that. There was another outfit that advertises nationally all over, and they advocate that you set up a corporate setup, rent yourself an office, furnish it, get a secretary, do expensive advertising, go into it as you would start a Fortune 500 company and buy and sell and rent. And they, of course, take money off the top of whatever you buy and continuing profits from you to a point where, frankly, if you make any money, you're very, very lucky. It doesn't work. My thought is start on your kitchen table, keep your overhead low, unless and until you acquire a lot of properties and need help managing, and watch your P's and Q's. And my approach to investing is exactly the opposite of that approach. And I've had half a dozen of their franchisees come into my office who told me they spend $80, $90, $100,000 and had that much in losses the first year or two they're in business, can't make it anymore, would love to get some of their money back, didn't get help from the corporate head office. Too many stories like that, Dan. I'm an advocate of first things first, one thing at a time, and build arithmetically, not geometrically. Build 1, 2, 3, 4 units, not 1, 10, 100, 1,000.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And one of the things too I think is important is like I just said, you go to the local real estate investor associations, and you can meet a lot of people there with a lot of experience. And to your point, I did not invest the additional $30,000 to get the mentor, Bart.
I think the contacts you make are great. I lecture at some of those network meetings, as you know, and I meet people that become lifelong customers and friends. As you know, one of the guys you interviewed, Mitch Ripken, I met Mitch on an airplane coming back from Florida, and we talked, and he's become a very good client, a dear friend, and a joint venture with us. And I think contacts are extremely important. Contacts are one of the C's of my 120 C's that are very important.
All right. You want to talk about a couple of the C's that come to top of mind there, Bart?
Yeah, I think I sent you a list of some of them, didn't I?
Oh, yeah.
Well, on page 4 of my book, we talk about consider agents, and I noticed in your literature that just about every deal you made except one was without an agent. Am I correct in that?
And the only one I did make with an agent I lost money on.
Yeah, I read that. I think communication is much more important. When you sell a house for my money, you put a sign on it that describes it, not says Coldwell Banker. Being Century 21 or Coldwell Banker doesn't do anything for you with their phone number. I think you put on the sign, beautifully rehabbed house, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, must see to believe,
Interesting.
Tell the public about it. In your ad, you don't put down Prudential Preferred. You put down recently rehabbed, like a palace. You communicate what it is you want to do. Agents, in my opinion, don't do that. Part of the cause, in my opinion, of the last demise of the real estate market half a dozen years ago was that you had agents who were homemakers 5 months before they were turned loose on the public, who were empty nesters and got their license and were kind of turned loose on the public to sell $1 million homes, which were overpriced. And their job was to pick up the customer and put them in the car and ride them over there and tell them that they have to make an offer by tomorrow night because there are other offers coming in and they're going to lose their great opportunity. Their main focus was to make a commission and really have any fiduciary responsibility to their customers. I don't do well. I was an agent, but I was a broker for 45 years. I had a broker's license, and I gave it back because I just felt that the ethical standards of being an attorney were a bit higher than all of the agents that I had dealt with. Just my own opinion, and not condemning and damning all agents. I do business with a bunch of agents, and they're nice guys and they're capable. Unfortunately, there are too many of them that just don't understand fiduciary relationships. I'm only allowed as an attorney to represent a buyer or a seller, not both. The agents I know take a listing and then their main focus becomes get to the settlement table, and get that check for the commission. And then, by the way, they make a pitch for the new owner of the house so that, if they ever want to sell, they call them. It's a little jaundiced view, but that's my experience.
And I live out here in Chicago now, and I have some friends out here who are buying about a house a week off the MLS using real estate agents, and they have some pretty solid people on their team. They have a brokerage, and they have, some good, well-trained people who understand the business on their side. And then I have also some friends in the Philadelphia, specifically in the Montgomery County area. This company is also buying properties. I'd say 9 out of 10 properties or 8 out of 10 properties that he's buying are on the MLS listed with real estate agents. And recently, I've tried to come around and I've been making offers on stuff that's listed on the MLS. And I'm used to doing business a certain way. And a lot of the people that are coming and contacting me directly, they're usually asking for a lot more money and they expect to negotiate back and forth. And usually it's a very unrealistic asking price a lot of times they find on Zillow, whereas I'm learning a lesson here myself on finding deals that are listed on the MLS. The lesson is that occasionally there are properties that come on the MLS at the perfect number, at the right number, and the only way to get that deal is to make a full price offer or just about a full price, maybe $500,000 more right away. Even Gary Keller was telling an example in one of his recent, well, I don't know if the book is recent, but The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And he said the same thing. He had the opportunity to buy this condo, and it was like a full price thing. And he called 2-3 days later to make the offer, and the condo was gone. And then the person who subsequently bought that condo ended up turning around and selling it, making $100,000 profit. So it's like, for me, I'm kind of observing the market and saying to myself, okay, maybe there's a few instances where paying full price is the only way to get the deal. I mean, do you have any experiences like that with you or any of your clients, whether
I'll tell you what my experience is. It's similar but not the same. I don't know how many agents I've called or met at network meetings or contacted and explained to that I wanted to buy real estate or finance real estate at a wholesale level, that I buy distressed merchandise, we fix it up, we carry it, and then resell it, and we have to make a profit. So we need to buy wholesale. I don't care how many agents you tell that to. They will immediately submit to you their entire listing of everything they have for sale at a retail price. They do not hear the word wholesale. And it gets to be a terrific waste of time. The one guy in the office who may understand what wholesale is buying them himself and flipping them. But
I guess
he's not going to give them to you.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, one of my early experiences was a guy down in Delaware who had been a musician, and he decided to go into real estate. And he put ads on the back of shopping carts and went on cable TV before anybody did. And it's, the ad was I buy houses. And I would ride around with him in his little red sports car. And he would, every hour it seemed, he got a phone call. He got like 50 calls a week. And the conversation would be, well, madam, if you're ready to sell your house, I need you to know something, that I am looking to buy your house and make a profit reselling it. So I'm not going to be able to give you what a broker might be able to give you. I'll make settlement quickly. I'll make you an offer. There'll be no haggling, and I can help you. And he would tell him straight out that. He would tell him that I have to put some money in the house, probably fix it up. And he would know the comps in the various areas. He told me he got 50 calls a week. He went out to see 5 of them. First he would ask him, what's the mortgage balance? And if the mortgage was too high, he would say to him, you need a retail broker. I can't help you. He went out to see 5 people a week. He made an offer on 2. He bought 1. Now, people have said to me, that's a terrible percentage. It's only 2%. And I would say, are you crazy? He was buying 1 piece a week, fixing them, flipping them, and making $15,000 to $20,000 per. He made between $750,000 and $1 million a year. His approach was wonderful. Nothing wrong with his approach. And he had his phone number on the back of shopping carts in supermarkets because he figured you had to appeal to the women, and they were the ones doing the shopping. And on cable TV, for the people who were sitting around late at night bemoaning the fact that they couldn't make their mortgage payments. He never dealt with brokers, and he had a thriving business, and that's been my experience.
That really is an interesting take on it, which I'd like to just focus in on a little bit, Bart. He basically he's being upfront. I mean, he's basically saying, hey, I'm an investor. I can give you this offer. If the offer works for you, great, let's do business. And if it doesn't work for you, we part as friends and you kind of go in another direction. What he's not doing, or what he's doing by being honest, is he's not like trying to lowball and steal a property. I mean, there's a number that works, and then there's probably a much lower number that would just be, complete theft to try to, get a house for $5,000 today in a neighborhood that sells for, 150. You know what I mean?
The other thing is he wasn't wasting a tremendous amount of time dealing with people who had to sell retail, or brokers that, whose job it was to get a retail price. There is a distinct difference between wholesale and retail.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another story about celebrities, hotshots in the real estate business who've made a lot of money and have big reputations. I have the kind of skin when I get on an airplane and go south and I turn on that little light above my head, I get instantly tan. I turn almost black. Mediterranean kind of skin. I was in Florida and I love flea markets. I love buying things inexpensively. And I fell in love with this 150 booth flea market, for the first indoor air-conditioned flea market in America. This was many, many years ago, 35, 40 years ago. I came back and I was playing tennis with a buddy of mine who was the second in command at Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust. And I was telling him about it, and he said to me, well, we own 4 flea markets, the Bazaar of All Nations. They ring the city of Philadelphia, and we do pretty well with them. And my boss, Sylvan, understands them and knows them well. Why don't you come in and talk to him tomorrow? And I did. I went over to see him. I had a white shirt on with my brown skin. And I walked into his office, and he said to me, Bart, yeah, Bob tells me you like this flea market in North Miami. I said, yeah. He said, we'll take half if you take half. He didn't ask to see leases. He didn't ask for a profit and loss statement. He didn't ask for a tax return. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I said, okay. And it was at that time, 35 years ago, it was you needed about $300,000 in cash, and that was all the money there was in the world. And he was going to take $150. And I went back to my office, in that building that I had where I had a bunch of young lawyers, and I said to them, hey, listen, guys, I got this investment in South Florida. The big shot, Sylvan, who's running Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust, is going to take half. I have a few units left. If you want them, you better let me know in the next day or two. It's what I call the negative sell. I'm going to qualify you. You're going to be lucky if I let you in this deal. They got instantly annoyed. What do you mean? You're going to make this big deal without us? I want a piece. I want a piece. So I sold mine on the strength of him. That day, I'm walking on Walnut Street going to lunch, and as luck would have it, he's in front of me by about 20 feet, walking up Walnut Street with 3 or 4 of the biggest real estate investors and builders in the city. And here's the conversation I overhear. He says to him, does this kid know anything about real estate? His father has bought hundreds of houses. And that's true, except what he's not telling him is my father never paid more than $1,500 for a little 3-bedroom house in his life and knows absolutely nothing about commercial real estate or flea markets or shopping malls. And then he turns and he says to them, and what's more, you should have seen the tan on this kid. He must have been in Florida studying this investment all winter long. He's selling me, I'm selling him. Neither one of us knows the first darn thing about the investment. We owned it for 20 years. It paid for itself and threw off a cash return every year. Above all, Dan, you must have luck. Without luck, nothing means anything.
Yeah, but listen, I bet if there's somebody listening right now, Bart, you don't want them to come into your office asking for a loan on luck. Am I right about that?
You better believe it. That was 35 years ago. I've learned a lot since. But what I'm trying to tell you is don't get involved in the emperor's clothes and follow celebrities or make deals just because somebody who you look up to says that it's a terrific deal. Don't be impressed with big shots. Do the numbers. Do your homework. The numbers are everything. In my book, there are forms, and we have them in the office, that you can follow, where you put in all your hard costs, all your soft costs. You project out every nickel that you're going to have to spend to get this thing up and running. It works on a small 3-bedroom house. It works on a commercial building of millions of dollars. You must do your homework. And your soft costs are often what kill you. You know, your settlement costs, your interest on your mortgage, your insurance, your title insurance, your transfer taxes, all manner of things that aren't bricks, mortar, glass, steel, tar, things you can't touch and feel. Your soft costs, you need to become a master of those things when you invest. I think I'm getting on a soapbox. You want me to go to a different topic?
Yeah, we're all good. Yeah, we're good. You're definitely right about that. I think one of the biggest problems for new people, even me right now, I mean, I'm looking at my whiteboards in my office here, and we got somewhere around 33, 34 deals on the board in some various state of ownership or contract. And yet I still feel like I'm having trouble finding deals, right? That seems to be like everybody's number one main concern is like, where's the next deal coming from? And I imagine that you probably hear some stories like this from your clients who are bringing deals to the table. I mean, can we talk about some of the ways that you know, a few of your clients or even yourself has found a few decent deals?
We can.
The guy in University City there, I mean, what's he doing to find deals? Is he buying them off the MLS, Bart?
I'll tell you what some people do that a lot of investors are not willing to do. They go into a neighborhood, drive into a neighborhood with their car, park their car, walk around, knock on doors, take signs, the numbers off signs that say for sale by owner, talk to the people hanging on the corner and ask them if they know anybody who wants to sell their house. One of the mistakes that some of our rehabbers make is they'll go into a neighborhood, they'll buy a house and start to fix it up and never talk to the neighbors. They don't want to bother the neighbors. They don't want the neighbors bothering them. When I go out and make an appraisal, I go into a house, I kick the tires, and then I go out on the street, and the first thing I do is find a person in that block and say, hey, You live here? Yeah. What do the houses sell for? And they'll say, oh, they usually go for $60,000, $65,000. You know anybody who wants to sell one? They'll say, well, maybe. Or do you know anybody who's looking to buy one? I'm going to make a beautiful house out of this. And more often than not, they'll say to me, well, I got a cousin who's looking for something, or I know a woman in a different neighborhood. You got to talk to the people in the neighborhood and not be above anybody. Communication is very important. As I told you, I like shopping carts. I like cable TV. I know another guy who has cards printed up, 500 cards that says, I buy houses. And he gives a kid $10 and he says, listen, go stick one of these under everybody's windshield wiper in a 4-block radius. And he puts his cards under windshield wipers. At parties, when people, you know, you don't have to talk sports and tell jokes all the time. Tell people what you do. Tell people what you're looking for. As I said, I'm not crazy about coaches, consultants, and courses. Instead of them, I can give you a list of about 8 or 9 books, if you'd like them now, or I can postpone it, that I recommend you buy and read. One's called...
Yeah, why don't we get into the book recommendations?
You want to get into that?
Yeah, we can get into that.
Okay. One of them is called The Bargain Hunter's Guide to Investing in Real Estate by Stuart and Donna Paltrowitz. Another is called Achieving Financial Liberty by Robert Allen. I like Robert Allen. He's written several books. Another is Start Late, Finish Rich by David Bach, B-A-C-H. Another is How to Plan, Contract, and Build Your Own House. That's more in the construction side of it. Richard Scutella and David Heberly. How to Negotiate Successfully in Real Estate by Tony Hoffman. There's a construction dictionary that was published by the Greater Phoenix, Arizona chapter, number 98 of the National Association of Women in Construction. How to Find Hidden Real Estate Bargains by Robert Irwin. The Unofficial Guide to Flipping Properties by Peter Richmond. Finally, How You Can Become Financially Independent by Investing in Real Estate by Albert Lowry. Now, instead of spending $35,000 on a weekend in Houston with a mentor you can't reach who's about 2 steps ahead of the pupil, if you buy all of these books secondhand you go on your computer, you might spend $100. And if you read them, you will have a tremendous background. You will have that language that you spoke about. And the language is extremely important.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think this list is also in another book you'd recommend, right? What's Making Real Money in Real Estate?
You heard of that one, huh? That's my book, How to Make Real Money in Real Estate by Bart Banks. If you email us at bbwlaw@yahoo.com, we will be very happy to ship you one, sell you one. It's $18.95, and it's a compilation of about 65 years of learning. Since I was my dad's bookkeeper right up until the present, and we like to think that it's what they call in Latin the emis, Dan.
And what does that mean?
The truth.
Okay.
One more thing I want to say about this is not how to acquire or where to acquire, but counsel, the word counsel. People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy real estate. If I said to you, I'm going to sell you a Maserati for $500,000, but I'm going to save you $1,000 or $1,500 because we're going to sell it to you. Well, you don't need brakes, Dan. Forget the brakes. You'd say, what are you, crazy? So many people buy real estate, and expensive real estate. They sign what they think are, quote, form or standard agreements of sale, and won't spend $500 to have an attorney, a real estate attorney, look them over and negotiate out the tough things and make sure that the clauses are in that you need to protect you. I think it's a mistake. It's like buying a Maserati without brakes. I know that it's probably done more often than not in our industry, but I can tell you that it keeps my office busy. There's no such thing as boilerplate. Every word in an agreement means something. We have on our computer in our office a seller's agreement of sale. That means we have the kind of clauses in there that if you get me to a settlement table, if I don't want to go, it's going to be Tuesday night at 3 a.m. and it's going to be 10 degrees out and raining. In other words, it's a tough agreement if I don't want to get to the settlement table. We have a buyer's agreement that reads a whole lot more like an option, that if my client wants, there's enough due diligence clauses in there and conditions that if my client wants to back out, really, it's not difficult at all not to show up at settlement and get your deposit back. There's a vast difference. And we only have a fiduciary obligation to, one, our client. We don't use standard agreements. The PAR agreement, Pennsylvania Association of Realtors agreement, is designed to protect one person, not the buyer, not the seller, but the broker. Make sure under any and all circumstances he gets paid. Even if your buyer backs out of the deal, the broker under that agreement gets half of the deposit.
Interesting.
A tremendous amount you can learn from a good real estate lawyer and contacts. I know contractors, I know buyers, I know sellers, I know permanent mortgage companies. Develop a good relationship with a good real estate lawyer. We've been practicing real estate law for my dad before me and me, 85 years. We have relationships that we're happy to share with you. If in this time of scarcity of product, you develop those kind of relationships, I think they can be very beneficial.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Well, Bart, we're getting to the top of the hour here. I have one more final question. And do you have any final jewels of wisdom to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I do. You're going to think it's a little corny from a two-fisted lender, okay?
All right.
Get up in the morning, wash up, dress up, show up, do the next right thing that's in front of you, and you'll make it. Treat real estate as a business. It's not a hobby. It's not a passive investment. Do the right thing. Be ethical. Care about the people you deal with. Care about your customers, your tenants, your buyers. You'll do all right.
Well said. And I know you shared an email address, but if anybody wanted to get more information, this keep in mind goes out to a national audience.
Okay, my phone number is 610-940-3900. We're happy to spend as much time as you want with you, helping you analyze deals. Initial contact, no charge. If we can help you with your financing, we're happy to do it. If we can help you with a legal analysis, we're happy to do that too. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come on with you today. It's been fun.
I thank you for coming, Bart. It's been a pleasure having you. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the REI Diamonds Podcast. Are you enjoying what you hear here? Maybe you know someone else who'd enjoy this episode. The best compliment you can give me is a referral. You can sign up to receive an email update of any new weekly interviews at www.reidiamonds.com. And I'll even send you my special report called 7 Sources of Off-Market Deals. That website, again, is www.reidiamonds.com, plural. You may also subscribe in the iTunes app. Just search REI Diamonds and click subscribe. Until next time, this is Dan Breslin.
Thanks for listening to the REI Diamond Interview. To receive the REI Diamonds newsletter and interview monthly, sign up now at www.reidiamonds.com.